On August 17, 2025, in São Paulo, in the Itaquera district, a routine patrol rolled quietly down Tobias Lelio Street. They pulled up beside a red Renault Duster parked at the end of a dead end for 2 full days. Neighbors had called the rescue services, worried that the car hadn't moved. The officers peered through the windows, in vain. One broke the glass and was hit by a nasty odor, a mix of stale air and something more unsettling. On the back seat lay a man, motionless. The phone and keys were missing. Empty bottles lay strewn nearby. The crime tech team noted traces of blood around his nose and lips, and the body had already begun stiffening. The cause of death was estimated to have occurred roughly 24 hours earlier. Thus began an investigation that would soon unravel a tale of love, revenge, and a carefully concealed crime. Before tragedy struck, Venicius Moutinho de Paula led a quiet, respectable life. He was 28 years old and taught physical education at a public school on the city's east side. He worked with kids aged 10 to 12, had a rare gift for connecting with them, and was held in high regard by his peers. His students loved him for his kindness and attention. His colleagues admired his work ethic and readiness to lend a hand. Outside school hours, Venicius ran an online fitness nutrition shop he'd built from scratch. He sold supplements and gear over the internet, personally delivering orders to fitness centers across the district. Everyone who knew him spoke of his ambition and humility. He never shied away from hard work and dreamed of launching a health academy where fitness would be accessible to all. His parents, Hugo Silva de Paula and Salvana, remembered a son disciplined and caring from a young age. He had no vices, avoided alcohol, and certainly had no interest in prohibited substances. He spent his free time with his younger brothers, helping them with homework and training. The family lived modestly but in harmony, and Venicius felt it was his duty to support the household, both emotionally and financially. Anyone who met him saw someone strong from within, yet void of arrogance. To friends, he was a confidant. To his parents, a pillar of support. His father once said his son always put others before himself. In the spring of 2025, Venicius had more plans than ever before. He was setting aside funds to open a gym under his online brand. He spent his evenings drafting a business plan, consulting with partners, and scouting locations in Vila Jacuí and Jardim Nova Vitória. Every sign pointed toward a promising future. Those close to him often remarked on his distinctive way with people. He never got caught up in gossip, avoided conflict, and seldom judged others. Even when faced with hostility, he often chose to step back rather than respond harshly. That softness, that openness, some would later believe, may have been the very trait that sealed his fate. Shortly before the tragedy, Venicius's co-workers noticed something different about him, a brighter outlook, an unmistakable optimism. He talked about his future, marriage, a family, kids. His life seemed to be coming together piece by piece. In private conversations with loved ones, he shared how everything felt like it was finally falling into place. No one could have seen the storm coming. His story had always been one of integrity, the kind of person who lived openly, avoided conflict, and genuinely tried to do right by others. That's what made what happened next so disturbing. It wasn't just a crime. It was cruelty without reason. Larissa Gonçalves da Mota worked as a care technician at a hospital on the east side of the city. She was a single mom raising a young daughter. She and Venicius Moutinho de Paula began dating in 2021. At first, it looked like a typical relationship, until things started to shift. Jealousy crept in. So did bouts of irritability. Their relationship turned rocky, swinging from affection to angry breakups. Over time, the arguments became more frequent. There were public scenes, and according to Venicius's family, one incident left him physically injured, something he documented with photos. In 2023, they broke up for good. Or so he thought. Despite the breakup, Larissa continued reaching out, texting, calling, pleading for another chance. She wouldn't accept no for an answer. Venicius did what he could to distance himself, focusing on work and fitness, but her persistence never let up. By early 2025, he started to grow concerned. He had found medication among Larissa's belongings, powerful sedatives meant strictly for hospital use, not something to be kept or used outside of medical supervision. These substances could cause serious side effects. Disturbed by what he discovered, Venicius made it clear to those close to him, reconciliation was off the table, for good. Then came February 21st, 2025, a turning point. During a visit, Larissa allegedly slipped something into his drink. Venicius later said he passed out and didn't fully wake up for nearly 2 days. When he finally came to that Monday, he realized someone had accessed his social media accounts without permission. Posts had gone up claiming he and Larissa were back together. Personal messages were sent to his contacts, including Juliana, a longtime friend of Venicius. Those messages were aggressive, offensive, and completely out of character for him. That same day, Venicius went public, posting that his accounts had been compromised and that the posts about his relationship were false. After that, he cut all ties. As far as he was concerned, there was no coming back. He informed his family about the situation and threw himself into his work. By April 2025, things finally seemed to stabilize. His friendship with Juliana, someone he'd known since high school back in 2011, began to deepen into something more. Around friends, he said he felt like himself again with her, calm, grounded. He didn't bring up February's incident again, and he avoided talking about the past. For the first time in a long time, he looked ahead and saw peace. From that moment on, Venicius and Larissa's lives went in completely different directions. While Venicius set his sights on clear goals and a future built on purpose, Larissa's behavior began showing signs of obsession. She tried reaching out to him repeatedly, showed unwelcome interest in his social circle, and reacted poorly when news broke that he was seeing someone new. That underlying tension would later become crucial in understanding what happened in August 2025. São Paulo, Friday, August 15th, 2025. That morning, Venicius Moutinho de Paula taught his scheduled physical education classes for 4th and 5th graders at a public school in the city's eastern zone. He completed the attendance log and updated the gym's equipment inventory before noon, then coordinated next week's schedule with the vice principal. There were no concerns about his work. Everything was routine. After lunch, he turned to his side business, an online fitness store. He checked payment confirmations, packed supplement orders, and prepared the required paperwork. He had only one personal delivery scheduled for that day, a drop-off in the Itaquera neighborhood. By around 6 p.m., he left home in his red Renault Duster, the same vehicle he used for most deliveries. The client was waiting at a gym near Avenida Itaquera. Venicius handed over the package, double-checked the order, got a confirmation via messenger, and sent the receipt electronically. The customer had no complaints about the delivery or the items. At approximately 7 p.m., Venicius sent his mother a short message. Heading home now. It would be the last known contact with his family that evening. His plan was to get home, prep for Monday's classes, update his notes, and review the student roster. From the outside, it looked like an entirely ordinary day. Nothing in his work logs or messages with clients or co-workers indicated stress or conflict. By 7 p.m., every task that required him to be out of the house was done. He should have been heading home. But after that delivery in Itaquera, Venicius received a call from Larissa Gonçalves de Mota. She asked to meet on good terms, suggesting they grab a drink to celebrate her recent birthday. Believing it would be a brief, civil conversation, Venicius agreed. Surveillance cameras later captured his red Renault Duster pulling into a motel in Itaquera. He was driving. A woman was in the passenger seat. Motel records confirmed the check-in. No disturbances reported. Larissa would later claim she slipped in unnoticed, without ID. But the front desk employee remembered differently. Larissa presented a digital ID and formally checked in at 9:03 p.m. That statement matched both surveillance footage and the registry log. During questioning, Larissa said the night was uneventful. They talked, they drank a couple of beers. She then claimed that Venicius used cocaine. His friends, family, and colleagues firmly rejected that claim, saying he was committed to a clean, healthy lifestyle and never touched prohibited substances. What's confirmed is this. At 9 p.m., they entered the motel. They stayed in the room for several hours. no one ever saw Venicius alive again. Itaquera, the night of August 15th into the early hours of August 16th, 2025. Inside the motel room where Venicius Moutinho de Paula had checked in with Larissa Gonçalves da Mota, exterior security cameras showed no movement outside the building throughout the night. After 10 p.m., his red Renault Duster remained parked in the lot. With no witnesses and no one else entering or exiting the room, the only accounts of what happened inside came from Larissa and from the digital trail left behind. Larissa described the evening as calm. They talked, shared a few beers. She claimed that Venicius slipped in the bathroom, hit his head, but recovered quickly and didn't seem seriously hurt. She said they continued talking afterward and that, under the influence of alcohol, he grew drowsy. But investigators had questions. First, Larissa had medical training, yet she never alerted motel staff or sought help, even though a head injury, especially one involving alcohol, can be dangerous. Second, crime scene technicians later confirmed there was water near the edge of the bathtub, suggesting a fall. But there were no signs of a call for assistance, not to motel staff, not to the rescue services. Then, at around 2 a.m., messages started going out from Venicius's phone to his girlfriend, Juliana. The messages were emotional, erratic. They included confessions and accusations, written in a voice that didn't sound like his. One message read, "Couldn't sleep, stepped out for air, ended up betraying you. I don't know how I could have done that to someone like you." Juliana immediately felt something was off. The tone wasn't his, the phrasing, the language. It didn't match the way Venicius communicated, especially the use of expressions that felt more feminine in style. She responded, asking for proof. A photo, a voice message, anything. No reply came. An hour later, the messages stopped. The phone went offline. Investigators reviewing the timeline concluded that Venicius's car had remained stationary the entire night. No one was seen exiting the room. The messages, it seemed, were sent from inside, at a time when Venicius may no longer have been in control of his phone. Larissa later told investigators that Venicius had been drinking, felt guilty, and sent the messages himself before going to sleep. But that claim didn't line up with the data. The typing style, the vocabulary, and the device activity pointed to Larissa using his phone. At 5:35 a.m., surveillance footage captured the Renault Duster leaving the motel. A woman was behind the wheel. Her body shape, hair length, and movement matched Larissa's description. Venicius was not visible. The vehicle was seen heading toward Tobias Lelio Street in the Dom Bosco neighborhood. Larissa claimed that Venicius was too intoxicated to drive and had asked her to take him somewhere quiet. She said he lay down in the back seat and asked to be left alone. That afterward, she called a cab and went home. São Paulo, Saturday, August 16th, 2025. By early morning, Venicius's phone was offline. His mother, Salvana, couldn't reach him. Calls, messages, nothing went through. By noon, the family knew this wasn't a routine delay. Venicius never disappeared without a word. His father, Hugo, and his brothers started driving their usual routes across the east side of the city, from Itaquera to Dom Bosco. They checked parking lots near gyms, stores, and anywhere else he might have gone for work. By midday, Venicius's family had already started checking urgent care centers and hospitals across São Paulo, including local UPA clinics. But his name didn't appear in any ER logs. As the hours passed and concern grew, they filed a missing person report with the police at the Vila Jacuí station. Officers documented his physical description, details about his red Renault Duster, and the time of his last known contact. At the same time, the family reached out to Larissa Gonçalves da Mota. In the initial call, she told them she'd seen Venicius briefly Friday night, said she left around midnight and hadn't heard from him since. When asked where they had last seen each other, she didn't give a clear answer. Later that evening, in a second conversation, her story changed. This time, Larissa claimed she had stayed with him the entire night, and that they parted ways around 8 a.m. When asked for specifics about where they separated, she first said she couldn't remember the name of the street. Then she added that he had dropped her off near the Dom Bosco station. Larissa's family listened closely to everything she said. The inconsistencies weren't just about timing, but about key locations. When asked how she got home, Larissa claimed she took an Uber, but she couldn't recall which street she ordered it from or what time she left. When pressed to show the ride history in her app, she claimed she had lost her phone and was now using a new one she bought that same day. Later, in hopes of getting a clearer account, Venicius's family contacted her again, this time with her sister present and the conversation recorded on a voice memo. On playback, Larissa's answers became even more inconsistent. She offered conflicting accounts of the same time window. When asked where exactly Venicius's car had been parked, she said it was on a dead-end street, but couldn't name which one. Her explanation for how she lost her iPhone also kept shifting. At one point, she said she left it in the car while using an app. Then it was a taxi. Later, she said she wasn't sure at all. For Venicius's family, this was the turning point. Larissa was the last person known to have seen him, and her timeline, her explanations, and her location details kept changing. By Saturday evening, the family had formed a firm conclusion. She wasn't telling the truth. They handed over the audio recording to the police, along with a written breakdown of her various statements, time-stamped and annotated, showing exactly where her account shifted. Venicius's phone was still offline. Attempts to reach him through messaging apps or email went unanswered. The family urged police to check surveillance cameras along the exits from Itaquera and the routes toward Don Bosco. They also requested patrols to keep an eye out for his red Renault Duster. By nightfall on August 16th, friends joined the search. They canvassed side streets and back alleys near train stations, took photos of dead-end streets, and flagged any car that looked like it had been parked too long. Still, no sign of him. At that point, one thing was becoming painfully clear. Whatever happened, it happened after he met with Larissa. And her story wasn't adding up. The forensic toxicology report arrived at the São Paulo Homicide Division, DHPP, after a full panel of tests on Venicius's blood, urine, and stomach contents had been completed. Both the initial screening and confirmatory analysis detected the presence of strong sedative medications, substances regulated under restricted use and typically administered only within licensed medical facilities. The concentration of these sedatives far exceeded therapeutic levels. It was high enough to cause severe suppression of the central nervous system. Simultaneously, the autopsy findings revealed clear signs of oxygen deprivation, pulmonary edema, frothy fluid in the airways, all consistent with respiratory failure. Notably, there were no signs of major head trauma. No evidence of skull or brain injury was found, the kind that could have supported the story of a deadly fall in a bathroom. This directly contradicted the narrative that Venicius died from slipping and hitting his head. Alcohol was present in his blood, at levels consistent with moderate intoxication, but on its own, that amount would not have caused respiratory arrest. However, when combined with the sedatives detected, it created a dangerously depressive effect on the body's respiratory control. The forensic experts were clear. It was the interaction between alcohol and these medications that triggered a gradual shutdown of respiratory function, leading to death. Items recovered from the scene, empty bottles and surface swabs from inside the car, were analyzed. No definitive biological traces were found on the containers to confirm how the substances were administered. Still, that didn't rule out the possibility that the sedatives had been mixed into drinks and ingested earlier, possibly in another location. The chemical profile of the substances matched both Venicius's blood and stomach content, indicating the drugs had been taken orally several hours before death. The forensic medical panel reached a definitive conclusion. This was no accident. There were no signs of any natural medical event that could explain the cause of death. The entire clinical picture pointed to intentional ingestion of sedatives in combination with alcohol, a mix that led to fatal respiratory depression, likely while Venicius was asleep or under heavy sedation. Larissa's professional background and her access to medical-grade substances gave investigators strong reason to believe she had both the means and the opportunity to acquire and administer these drugs. The lab results changed everything. What started as a puzzling, unexplained death in a parked car now became something else entirely. A calculated poisoning, masked as a voluntary act of solitude. Following the conclusions from the toxicology and forensic teams, the DHPP filed a comprehensive report with the District Attorney's Office. It included a detailed timeline and a list of supporting evidence. Acting on the prosecutor's request, a São Paulo court issued a temporary arrest warrant for Larissa Gonçalves da Mota, along with authorization to seize any items potentially tied to the investigation. Early that morning, São Paulo's Homicide Division, DHPP officers arrived at an address on the city's east side. Larissa Gonçalves da Mota was taken into custody without resistance. She was transported to the station, informed of the grounds for her detainment, and granted access to legal counsel. A court-authorized search of the property led to the seizure of several items: a recently purchased cell phone with no data on the previous user, a notebook containing handwritten records of her hospital shifts, and packs of medication, including expired single-use syringes, found outside of any standard home medical storage. All seized items were sealed and submitted for forensic examination. After a medical evaluation, Larissa was placed in a holding facility for temporary detainment. The State Public Safety Office confirmed that the arrest was procedural, tied to the ongoing investigation into the death of Venicius Moutinho de Paula. Authorities stated that they were continuing to build their case around the theory of deliberate poisoning, staged to look like the victim had chosen to isolate himself in his vehicle. That same day, Venicius's parents, Salvana and Hugo de Paula, arrived at the DHPP with additional evidence. They provided investigators with an audio recording of a conversation with Larissa, along with transcriptions of her prior statements, documents filled with contradictions about when and where she last saw their son. For the family, this was the first moment in months that felt like real movement toward accountability. It brought relief, but not peace. Public reaction was swift. Teachers at Venicius's school, parents of his students, and local residents shared a statement expressing support for the family and demanding a full trial. On social media, calls flooded in urging prosecutors to move forward with charges and take the case to a jury. Reporters reached out to the DA's office for updates on when formal charges might be filed. The procedural steps ahead were clear: analysis of the seized devices and substances, forensic review of digital communications, preparation of a formal indictment by the prosecutor, and eventual transfer of the case to court. No verdict had been issued, but the case was now moving from preliminary findings to trial, where all the evidence would be weighed in public. The funeral was private. No press releases, no cameras. Salvana, Venicius's mother, stayed beside the casket until the final prayer. She didn't blame. She didn't accuse. She just asked investigators to keep her informed every step of the way. At home, she began packing up his belongings, neatly, carefully, into boxes. She doesn't ignore phone calls anymore. Every ring might mean something. His father, Hugo, handled the logistics, sorting documents, printing medical records, drafting questions for the prosecution. He speaks with control, calm, direct. But when he walked into the school to return his son's belongings, his voice broke. The brothers tried to stay strong. They escorted their parents to the police station, helped respond to media inquiries, and monitored social media to keep false narratives in check. One of them now drives Salvana to the cemetery every Sunday. Juliana, Venicius's girlfriend, kept to herself. She gave police her chat logs and a detailed account of the strange messages she received that night. Then she changed her number and stopped going near the places they used to visit. She visits the grave early, leaves a note, says nothing, and walks away before anyone else arrives. In custody, Larissa has not admitted guilt. During questioning, she defers to her attorney and repeats a single phrase: "I didn't do anything illegal." No apologies, no explanation for the contradictions. At the school where Venicius once taught, his photo now hangs on a memorial board. Teachers remember his calm demeanor, his quiet voice during lessons, and how he stayed late to help students who struggled. Parents recall how he spoke to every child with patience and respect. At the burial, the farewell was quiet. A short prayer from the priest, a few words from co-workers, the grief of a family. No dramatic vows. Just a clear, steady plea that justice would be pursued to the very end. The family's hope is simple and direct: to witness a public trial where everything will be heard: the footage, the forensic findings, the testimonies. They don't want noise, they want a verdict, one that tells the truth about how Vinicius died and who is responsible.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.